Hello, how are you again? My name's Terence Baker, news editor, EMEA at CoStar News Hotels, and this is The Upgrade, our monthly podcast looking at news, views, and what's going on in the European, Middle Eastern, and African hotel industry. I'm very, very pleased to say today in the studio we have Mingjie Wang, who's the chief correspondent of China Daily, an award-winning documentarian, correspondent, and filmmaker. You do it all, don't you? Well, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Terence. Thank you for the
My,
flattering introduction.
my pleasure. We are going to be talking about Chinese travelers, the Western European, the American hotel industry. Every time you go to a convention, they say the Chinese will come back. We have to be ready. When will they come back? That's a big question. And we have Mingjie here to tell us all about what he sees on a daily basis, writing about this and other things of interest to the Chinese diaspora and the Chinese world in general. So welcome again. Let's start by asking Mingjie, can you give me a general timeline of what happened to the outbound Chinese guests during and following the COVID-19 epidemic?
Yeah, I think before COVID, to 2019, there was a peak. I think the Chinese travelers, and they were the biggest spender for the global tourism. And there was about 155 million trips made by the Chinese annually, and they're spending 250 billion US dollars. And then, as we know, that COVID happened, and between 2020 to end of 2022 or beginning of 2023, and that was, Chinese tourists coming out was on hold, and it was halted because of the quarantine and various policies, and people are not traveling out. And then China reopened at the beginning of 2023, but when it's reopened, people were still in kind of mood, trying to understand whether it's fit to go abroad, and safety still at the time was a priority. And again, the flight was not there because for 2 years, for 3 years actually, there was no flights, and then for those kind of infrastructures to build up, it takes some time. So travel opened in 2023, and then between 2023, 2024, I would say gradually people are coming out, but then they mainly focus on Asia, Southeast Asia, like in Thailand, in Malaysia, in Japan, in Korea. So that was, recovered rapidly and fastly because of the flight capacity, visa, and all of that, and also safety. And then now we're coming to 2025. I think global tourism depends on which figures of data you're looking at, and they are coming to the point of 2019 level. And then Asia, Southeast Asia, they're doing very well, and also Middle East, they're doing well because it's kind of mid-term distance, not like a short haul like Southeast Asia. And then you have Middle East, and also the countries they're promoting vastly and significantly, like Saudi. They opened up in 2019, and then they have a goal by 2030. They want to attract 5 million Chinese to go there. And then you have UAE, you have Egypt, those countries, they have a flight capacities, and also they're mid-range, in terms of coming all the way to Europe. But Europe is also having a good, strong momentum as well. I think from the Dragon Trail International, those kind of sentiment surveys, they're saying that's still on the top list of the Chinese people want to travel in terms of long haul. In terms of recovery, they're more or less like 90%, or even maybe by the end of 2025, I will be close to or maybe about to the 2019 level. And then going beyond 2026, it will be, broader normalization. And then when it comes to USA market, they are recovering rather slow, a bit slower than the rest of the market, because of the visa, because of the flight capacity, also because of the political climate between the countries. And
well, let's be clear, Mingjie. Two things fascinate me about China is that we saw the economics of Chinese fall a little bit during, maybe after the pandemic, from the great heights of the 15% GDP growth every year. And secondly, let's not mince around our words. There was a lot of antipathy towards China about COVID. The Chinese were blamed for it. Are those things working against the European and American hotel industries in terms of getting Chinese travelers back now?
I think that's a very good point. I'll give you some examples, actually. I remember the shutdown was happening actually the beginning of 2020 in China, and then it's come to Europe in March and April. I had friends actually traveling to Asia, traveling to Austria for skiing. And then they told me the experience because they're Asian, they look like Chinese, and then when they go into restaurants, even though at the time the pandemic was not reached to the high point in Europe, but because China already had their lockdown. And then when they were there to the restaurant or to the ski resorts, and people just giving them different looks. So they have to find a way to say, oh, we're from, not from China or from somewhere, to protect themselves. But also during the COVID, I don't know whether you saw those kind of videos of the Chinese on the tube in the US or in public in Europe, in the UK. They're being attacked because they're Chinese, and then being saying that, they brought the virus, which is a bit unfair and prejudiced and biased. So for the Chinese, when they come abroad, come into Europe or come to US, really the top priority for them is safety, and they want to feel safe before they travel to the country. So I think for the destinations here, they really need to make that clear. When you travel here, you're safe and you're welcoming, and then have China ready, and then making them feel comfortable, and then that's really will be a big advantage.
Right. We hope those kind of attitudes were only from a few people, and largely disappeared now. The hotel industry welcomes everyone, as you know. Are you still seeing, though, that the majority of Chinese travellers will go to Southeast Asia in the next few years? A, because it's closer. B, because of the points you made about it being more welcome, perhaps, and also doing a lot of marketing.
Yeah, I think the closeness of the Southeast Asia to China is definitely an advantage, because if you want to make a trip, and if it's only like a few hours flight, and then you can have a spontaneous decision and then go in there. But on top of that, there are other drivers behind that. I think visa, either it's e-visa, free visa, or visa on arrival, it really makes it easy for Chinese to travel. So in terms of countries like Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, though they all have those kind of visa, either free visa or e-visa policies, and then you can see that there's a surge of Chinese going there for sure. And also Chinese are very interested in Japan as well because of the culture. And then recently, I think in September, the South Korea has a policy of free visa for the group Chinese travelers and to get in there.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think a visa policy is definitely an advantage. And then secondly is the airfare capacity. Like if you have more flights, and then it's good for people to go to. And then in terms of a culture, it's more similar. The Chinese, in terms when they travel, they like to try new things, but also they like have the comfort food. So when you're in Southeast Asia, it's like you're easy to find similar kind of cuisine or food when you're coming, like the same ones as you from China. And also there's good value for money. And so you can pick up the good deals, and then you don't have to make a long plan. For example, if you come to Europe or come to USA, as some of the surveys said, that it takes a 1 month lead time. But what I believe are longer than 1 month, because you need to get a visa. Sometimes a visa takes 2-3 months to prepare. But then in Southeast Asia, if a visa is not problem, you can easily make a decision when it comes to May holiday or national holiday. You just book a flight and then you go there. So I think there's a list of various reasons, that why Southeast Asia is mostly Chinese travel going abroad. I think it's above 60% of the outbound travel during the Golden Week just passed in China.
And in Europe and maybe Africa as well. I mean, who's doing it well for the Chinese? Is there any markets that are actually welcoming or actually have gone the extra step to say, come to visit us? want that Chinese travel market because it is huge. I mean, it's 1.4 billion people.
Yeah, we have 1.4 billion people, and then the data from the National Immigration Office just revealed that we have about 160 million people has the passport, which means that's 11% of the population travel abroad. Just imagine, tiny increase of that 11% that would make a huge wave to the global tourism. So the impact of the Chinese traveler is definitely significant. But in terms of which countries are doing well, so we talked about Asia, and then the Middle East, as I mentioned, just some data coming from after the Golden Holiday. UAE is doing very well, and Qatar is doing well, and Saudi is doing well, and top 5 destination for one of the platform, the second largest online platform, Tongcheng, shows that Saudi, Egypt, New Zealand, Kazakhstan, and UAE, they're the top 5 destinations according to the bookings from them. So I want to pick up the Saudi again. It's quite impressive because later on you probably want to ask. I've been working closely with the Saudi Tourism Authority. I was fascinated by their stories because from 2019, literally there was not so many tourists going there. They opened up, and then you had the COVID happened. And now they're seeing, such a huge number of Chinese, and they have a goal of 5 million by the end of 2030. I think they have a lot of roadshow in China, tours in China to introduce them. I think the culture, the exoticness, the uniqueness, and also some parts in Alula in Red Sea project. They're building the fascinating hotels over there. I think for Chinese, sometimes that's something new, something unusual. It definitely attracts their attention. And then when it comes to Europe, I think certain countries are definitely doing well, like the top ones, the France, the UK, the Australia, the Italy, and also countries like Iceland. They want some exoticness. It's so far away, and the one part that plays well, you probably want to find out maybe by the end of the year, is the winter sport destinations, because China hosted the Winter Olympics in 2022. But before that, we built so much infrastructures and facilities, and then trying to get people onto that sports. We had a pledge of 300 million people getting onto the winter sports, but before the Olympic in 2022, I think there was 340 million people in all sorts of winter sports, not exclusively in skiing or snowboarding, but skating or all others. But just tiny proportion of that, will ease into the Chinese people coming, they go to Japan for skiing, they go to South Korea for skiing, and then they have skiing within China itself, but ultimately they want to come to the Alps. So the countries like Switzerland, Italy, and Austria, they are also doing well, and they attract actively of the Chinese coming to their winter destinations.
And I believe the next Winter Olympics is in Cortina, isn't it?
Yeah,
in Italy.
In Milano.
I was in Italy, my wife's Italian. We were in Rome just last month, and it was full of Chinese travelers enjoying themselves amid 1 million pilgrims for the Jubileo in Rome, of course, the religious 25-year festival they have there. Also, the sad death of the last pope, paying their respects. How do you see the change in the type of Chinese traveller? You mentioned some groups, some countries have the initiative of visa-free for groups and allow them easier. In Europe, in Africa and Middle East, the areas I cover, how are you seeing those travellers change? It's not the groups anymore, is it, going to the A-list destinations, or is it individual travellers? How do you see the differences now?
I think I wouldn't say it's not a group of travellers at all, because before COVID, it was definitely the groups of Chinese, years ago, it was the Japanese travelers, group travelers, and then we saw the groups of a busload of Chinese travelers. But the COVID certainly kind of changed the patterns of how Chinese travelers. And then in Europe, you would definitely see more FITs, and people will come travel as a couple, as friends, and then people are more comfortable to travel by themselves rather than with the groups. But having said that, I think the group travel will still happen. As I mentioned, that we only have 11% of the Chinese people having a passport, meaning they can travel, they will travel abroad. But then that number will certainly change. So for those people who haven't been abroad, so the easy way is definitely getting onto the big bus groups and for them travel. But the trends are changing, and then now for the Chinese, we see in Europe they have made more than 50% they are FIT travelers, and especially in the Gen Z, the younger generations, and they're definitely maybe 60-70% they are traveling by themselves or with a small group, with family or friends, rather than big groups. So those things are changing. So for those, because of changing the patterns, it is useful for the destination to be aware of that fact, and then how they have to engage in those kind of FIT travelers. So you need to use different platform, like for example, the red note in Chinese, we call it 小红书. It will be useful if you have the KOLs or influencers and to come to those destinations and to promote those kind of destinations, and then it's act as an inspiration for the FITs or to get the ideas where they want to travel to.
Before the pandemic, if I remember, hotels was saying, okay, we need certain foodstuffs for breakfast, we need language skills behind the front desk, perhaps even a kettle in the bedroom was an important issue. I seem to remember, to welcome the Chinese traveller. Your comments are fascinating about the change in a profile. What is influencing that new generation of Chinese travellers to travel? Is it the internet? Is it the world's classic sites in Europe, the Colosseum, Tower Bridge, etc.? I mean, what is really influencing them, and how do hoteliers in Europe and elsewhere understand and use that to promote their hotels?
That's a very good question. I think as a Chinese, it's all to target the Chinese market. It's always useful when you have the China Ready programs, as what you said. Have the kettles, the hot waters, the language or the slippers, and sometimes you have the toothpaste and a kind of kit, because it's make them feel comfortable, and also it will help that you have the Alipay, the WeChat Pay. There's figures showing that destinations or hotels then or shopping malls, they have Alipay or WeChat Pay, and then in terms of transaction and revenue, it will be definitely higher, because they when they come out, they have a credit card, but they might have some cash as well. But then because they get so used to the Alipay and WeChat Pay in China, so if you have those kind of facilities or infrastructures here in Europe, and they will definitely spend on it. And also for the Gen Zs, younger generation FITs, they're also very fascinated about experience. And shopping is always there. And the luxury shopping, high-end bags and stuffs, and they will shop abroad. And also shopping is in the tradition of the Chinese, because when you come abroad, you always will think of buying some gifts for your family when you go back. So the Chinese will always be shopping. But in terms of other factors, I think that the younger generation, they are really interested in the experience. They want to have a different experience when they travel to this country. What is so unique about here? Maybe have a wine tasting, or maybe have a track, hiking, or it's something you don't often see on your trips, because while Chinese travelers, they're so digital savvy, and they also like the bragging rights, the boasting rights. I've done something, this is so unique, and then you can tell your friend about it. If everybody doing it, it's not so unique, but if I can do it, it will be unique. And then they like some culinary experience and trying the local food and what the local is offering. So for the destination hoteliers, if they want to get that Chinese, and then as I mentioned earlier, they need to make sure they are discoverable. They are discoverable in the certain channels that the Chinese are looking for inspirations. So Red Note, which I mentioned earlier, it's kind of like the Bible now in China, in terms of the Chinese travelers. They always get the information over there. They will check or search or ideas, or search for how to get a visa, search for how to get flights, and it's really helpful. So hoteliers, if they can afford, have the KOLs, have the Chinese influencer KOLs, and then to go to those places to create the content, that would be seen by the Chinese travelers will definitely be helpful.
And what do you see in the next 3 to 5 years in Europe and Africa and Middle East in terms of Chinese traveller? I mean, you mentioned Saudi Arabia's got an impressive target. Where else do you see the Chinese coming and what numbers and what spend? Do you have any notion of what money we can expect to get over here?
I'm not the economist. I'm only the reporter, so I only just talking to people and again, seeing those kind of data. So I wouldn't be given any kind of specific kind of forecast. But what I would say is, in terms of the recovery, the 2025 will become to similar to the 2019 kind of level, and 2025, beyond the 2026. More Chinese will definitely be here, and then we can see they will be spending. And then if you are marketed right, then you're using the right gimmicks, and then they will definitely to be interested. And then take another example in terms of winter sports, and because I love skiing myself, and then because I lived here for a while, and when I go, I kind of like a Western mentality. You go there for a week, skiing for a week, But when you think about the Chinese, it's kind of different. So what they like is when they come for the winter destinations, they will probably try the ski resorts. And then unlike the Westerners, they will stay in one ski resort for a week. And if they have a chance, they will try to pick a few, like take Austria, for example. I want to St. Anton for a day, and then I want to Zurden for a day. They want to be able to see the variety of that. But on top of that, they might have a week or 10 days, they might ski one day, spa one day, shopping one day, other sightseeing one day. So when the destination marking them, they have to know, the different kind of features in terms of Chinese travelers. So then you will prepare well. And also in terms of the calendar, you have to be aware, because here, the summer holiday, the Easter holiday, people go and travel in Europe. But in China, we have a May holiday, which is the beginning of May. And also we have national holiday, which is beginning of October. So what happened was October 1st to October the 8th. So nowadays, they even extend it a bit longer for about two weeks time. So the hotelier and destination, they need to be aware of those kind of windows and then make sure, to target that. And then on top of that, we have the Chinese New Year, which is usually end of January and beginning of February, which I think it works out very well, because those kind of slots are not the prime holiday season for the Europe, but it is for Chinese. But if you can have yourself being easy to discover by the Chinese, to be seen by the Chinese, I think they will be having an advantage.
So have people in your organizations who understand the Chinese travel mentality and likes and calendars, as you say, critically important. Lastly, perhaps, how is artificial intelligence changing things?
Yeah.
It must be.
Yes, it is. I think that their data shows that like Trip.com, which is one of the biggest, booking system in China, and they will use those kind of AI, but also the Chinese using AI for use translation. It's you can see a huge surge for Chinese and coming up with using AI. And I'm also been talking to people, then they try AI is translation, but also they help them to create an itinerary. And for if I want to go this and then give me an inspiration of what I can say. I'm not saying that completely following it, but they are really using AI as a tools to make their travel more smooth and to get more ideas. And I think as we progress, AI will play even bigger part in terms of Chinese travelers and planning their overseas trips.
Mingjie, that is fascinating. And we should mention that Mingjie is going to be at the World Travel Market in early November. He's moderating a panel titled From Snowfields. We talked about skiing, didn't we? From Snowfields to Screens, How Sports Stories and AI are Powering the Next Wave of Chinese Outbound Travel. That will be at the World Travel Market at Excel here in London. I believe it's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, November 4th, so you do not want to miss that. I'll be there. And again, Mingjie, thank you so much for your time. That's a fascinating insight. Hopefully it gives our listeners an insight into what they need to do, if they've not already done it, to get this new wave of Chinese travellers into our hotels and give them the welcome they deserve and need. Thank you so much for your time. It's a real pleasure. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned and we'll come to you next month. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Davon Reed.
I'm Omari Head.
And I'm Chris Henry.
We're the hosts of the Next Gen in Lodging podcast. It's a monthly show in which we interview a new generation of hoteliers to get their insights into a variety of disciplines and topics, from finance to food and beverage and hotel operations. Listen to us on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode of The Upgrade was recorded in October of 2025 by Terrence Baker and edited by Rachel Dobb. Look for this and more at costar.com/hotelnews.